And welcome to Onesies, a podcast of one season's wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew.
My name is Emily.
I'm trying to remember the last time we talked about wonders and not blunders. We are working our way through 1990s, not infamous for a reason, Dracula the series. And we've reached episode 12, which does mean we are definitely in the latter half of the series. Episode 12 is titled The Great Tickler.
I was very excited for this because there's a date scene. I thought maybe that would come into play, but no.
No, it does not. Yeah, whatever you're thinking the Great Tickler might refer to, it doesn't refer to tickling or greatness. What are your three things?
Cock blocking, straight out the gate. A queer lot, and Max can wait, wink, wink.
Okay. Mine are like they all do in Europe. Substantial artist bill. And fine, we'll just do zombies are so stupid, because that is a recurring question we've had about this fine show.
Yes.
So my first note is singing Jackass Piano Man.
The titular Great Tickler.
Yes.
We discover is an older gentleman, very continentally European. He's got a British accent, but it seems he's very shishi. Older gentleman trying to do a John Houseman impression. Not very good at it, because John Houseman's fucking rad. And singing a song, trying to think, it's not like lounge singery, but
No.
I can't quite put my finger on it, but if you saw it, you would know exactly what I meant.
It's just what you chill and listen to in Luxembourgian cafes.
Apparently, singing a song, and you hear a voice that you recognize as Gustav's off camera, clapping wildly. This is a cultured European gentleman going absolutely wild for this man who can carry a tune. I'm not saying he can't sing. It's just very schmaltzy and bad.
Yes.
And the Great Tickler makes his way through the crowd. He like pats some lady on the head, shaking hands with other people, and finally sits down at Gustav's table, where he orders a drink immediately. And Gustav invites him to dinner. But Sophie and Chris are there, and they are doing the same thing that they did to Gustav when he was on TV. And, when the Great Tickler asks, "Oh, how did you like my performance?" What did Chris say? Something like, "I've never seen anything like it before."
Mm-hmm.
And Sophie says something like, "You must be very brave."
And then they talk shit about him as they're walking away from the table.
But what do they say? They say, "Why did you bring him?" Meaning Gustav.
And why did you invite him to dinner?
So were they on a date? One. And why would they invite a cock blocker, even though he encourages them?
You mean Chris and Sophie, or Tickler and Gustav?
Chris and Sophie.
Well, they make a big deal about how they left Max at home, which is unfortunate, because what this scene needed was Max being weird around an old man.
We get a little bit of that later.
We do, but no, my "is it a date" comment was about Gustav and Tickler.
Because it does seem very, very much like he comes straight to the table. I mean, after ruffling some hair, and shakes his hand and just sits right down.
And Gustav is effusive over this hack.
Yeah, this
absurd cheapskate hack. Like, Gustav's just like, "You're the best."
Yeah,
it's like,
and
this only makes sense.
It's not Pavarotti. This isn't like Liberace even. I mean, no. This is not an entertainer of any value, really.
No, and Gustav just thinks he's great.
He thinks he's the bee's knees. It's very weird.
But then once they leave, who but Alexander Lucard should approach the table? And the tickler offers him an autographed photo.
Which I thought was funny.
Yes. But Lucard's not interested. He wants to book him for a private engagement this weekend. So Gustav's having him over for dinner on Thursday. This weekend suggests Saturday.
Yeah.
Will this actually be important? No. Was I convinced that it had to be important because they were making a big deal out of it? Yes.
Yes, me too.
I was wrong. Okay. Credits. Then we get Max and Chris is working on his personal ad because that's how all of the teenagers in Europe do it, is they submit teenage personal ads to make dates.
That sounds incredibly dangerous and like a very, very bad idea. That sounds like you're asking for trouble. I mean, I know that it was something that adults did allegedly in the 80s, 90s, probably 70s, but it seems like you could really find yourself in the shits pretty easily just meeting random people.
And to make things even better for Chris, Max has rewritten the letter.
Right.
Now, I did not keep up with all of the descriptions, except that the letter makes Chris sound hyper cool.
Mm-hmm.
But he worries it makes him sound too cool, like he's Batman. To which Max says, Batman never had to do a personal ad, dude.
And he encourages Max to take out the stuff about sensitivity because he doesn't want some woman reading him poetry by a fire. By candlelight. And I wrote down, apparently poetry is for gay F words. So great. Way to go, Chris.
Did you see the tweet about how, what was it? It's Rihanna on the cover of some magazine with her dude, and some guy's going, "Oh, men are just emasculated these days. I would never hold my baby." And the retweet was, "Fellas, is it gay to have sex with Rihanna?" Because that's what I'm like, Chris, why do you think she's reading you poetry by candlelight?
There's a whole episode of Strangers with Candy where Jerry Blank has a boyfriend and he's like popular and on the football team, but he thinks it's gay to have a girlfriend, so they have to keep it secret. It's really stupid.
Okay, so now we get to dinner, so it's Thursday already.
Yeah.
And Tickler is singing for the family. Gustav says bravo. Gustav says brillante. You said he was a cultured European gentleman?
He's a cultured European gentleman.
I think he's a Canadian hack, is what I think. Who at least can get his boots out. But other than that, I think the word you were looking for was Canadian hack. Okay, so they ask what the song is about, to which Tickler says, some Italian tired of being a clown, I believe. And then Sophie has to explain what it actually is.
Yeah.
So Tickler doesn't even know what he's doing.
Nope.
But then he explains that he is whatever St. John Smythe. St. John Smythe.
St. John Smythe.
I always thought St. John was the British stealing culturally appropriating an Indian name. I didn't realize it was just how they were going to pronounce St. John.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before this show.
Fucking weirdos. It was on Grantchester, and I was just like, what?
I've never heard of it until this show. And one thing I noticed in this scene where they question him about whether or not his brother is a scientist, and he said, "Oh yes, my little brother, blah blah blah." But he's drinking an awful lot of alcohol, and I think this is, he's an artist. This is part of what he does, is he gets drunk all the time, but he doesn't actually act drunk or anything.
No.
Which is really weird. But he just keeps pouring and pouring and pouring. And did you notice that on the first pour he spills a whole bunch? It was really weird. It was a really odd choice.
It wasn't his booze. I mean, if you were going to go over to Gustav's and hook up, were you going to drink before you and Gustav got down? Just saying.
I'm still thinking about it.
Okay.
So this is where I wrote the St. John Smythes sure are a queer lot because you have the nutty professor and then you have this hacky musical act who also seems to do kind of vaudevillian stuff because he talks
Yes,
about
he talks
throwing
about it.
knives, he talks about other things that he's done. So he's a bit of a multiple threat when it comes to entertainment.
Okay. So then okay, but yes, they're like, "Oh, your brother designed the vampire gun." To
Yeah.
which Mr. Tickler says he's always making useless stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, I've got New Glory this weekend. I'm going to be performing at Lucard's." And
Yes.
then Max and Gustav are like, "You can't." And he's like, "Well, I can handle it." And he's like, "But I've got to go now because I have to go to court tomorrow for my knife. They never let you forget a knife throwing miscalculation."
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he leaves.
Yes.
Are you going to get to the point where he's walking down the street or are you going to skip over that?
No, we've got to mention that because that's when it becomes entirely pointless that we established
Yeah.
anything in the cold open.
So he's walking down the street and in I my note is if a hobbit were a human because he's walking kind of jauntily and he's like whistling and humming to himself and singing along. He just seems like a happy guy. I mean, he's a little drunk. He's just had a meal on somebody else's dime. And, he's just happy as a clam. But honk honk,
It's Lucard
it's Lucard. Rolls up behind him in a limo.
and says, "Hey, do you want to come to the castle early?" And Tickler's like, "Sure, that sounds great, but we need to stop by my hotel." To which Lucard says, "No, we don't."
He says motel,
Motel, I'm sorry.
which I thought was weird.
He's at the Luxembourg Motel 6, obviously.
But my explanation for why Lucard does this might explain away your feelings about the setting up in the introduction. I feel like Lucard knew he was sitting with Gustav and the kids, and because vampires have superhuman hearing, he could hear that Gustav invited him over for dinner, and so he was going to cause a bait and switch if he told Gustav he was going to Lucard's castle on the weekend, he would never expect him to go early. And so he picked him up early to kind of throw people off the scent, at least for a couple of days, so he could execute his plan.
Master plan. His master plan, which involves him sending overnight delivery from Luxembourg to England.
England, I think, is where St. John Smith is from.
And it's not filmed in England. It's filmed in Luxembourg, and they put a McCallum research sign on something. Now, this is going to bring back the Boffin. His first scene has him. Do they blow up the door? Yes. This is
their attempt at physical comedy, I think.
A great action beat. So he and his assistant are blown down the front stairs under the door. They get up, and the assistant is worried about the mail getting destroyed. And the Boffin says, "Why do you read the mail? Like, you pay one bill, they expect you to pay more." And he's like, "But you have this special delivery." So I guess maybe they did fly it over. And it is a letter from Lucard saying, "Only you can save Mycroft Tickler. You need to get over here with your brain." Or so. Does he mention the vampire gun?
No, not right away.
And then the Boffin is stricken, and his assistant says, "What's the matter? Is it postage due?" And he says, "No, it's even worse than that. I've got to get to work." And so he then knocks the assistant down the stairs some more. And I'm like, I think that guy would be unconscious at the very least after riding under a door down a flight of stairs, concrete stairs. But
what do you know?
So what do I know? The Boffin is going to have to get back to Luxembourg. So, to save his brother, who Lucard is holding hostage,
Yes.
which we'll get to that in a second, too. But first, we've got to check in on Chris getting his first date.
Right.
It's just his kind of girl. Slim, dark haired, yeah, and blue eyed.
She likes
How,
music.
yep, how bad could it be? And I'm just like, oh, it's Sophie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
immediately.
obviously.
Yeah. Duh.
Duh. Like, hey, does that describe anybody in your house, dude? Who's been
Who
like,
you've already been out on a date with?
who you've already been on a date with, who's been like, Chris, come up to my room and help me try on my underwear, like for 4 episodes.
Will
Okay,
you check to make sure this bikini fits me?
no, I want to watch sport. I want to watch American sport. Okay, so then Gustav gets a call from the Motel 6.
Yes.
And he's like, I don't know why you think I'd pay Tickler's bill. And it's like, because you apparently brought him to town, dude. And he's like, well, of course it's substantial. It's an artist's bill. And I'm just like, oh my God, this
What kind of bill
explains
does he
so
run up at a
much.
motel? It's not like you can get room service. You're just paying for nights in a bug infested room.
He's got a vibrating bed and he's got pay-per-view.
Pay-per-view.
Yep.
I forgot about pay-per-view.
Yep.
God,
Yep.
the 90s were cool.
There you go. So then we cut to the castle where Lucard has not hurt Tickler in any way,
Mm-mm.
has not imprisoned him.
But he's exasperated by his
He
presence.
is miserable because Tickler's bothering him and just telling him things. And Lucard is miserable, which is kind of funny.
It was pretty funny.
But then in comes Gustav.
Gustav comes in first, and Max. He roped Max into it at some point too. With holding cross. Yeah, because they're holding crosses. Because I have another note at the end after they're rescued. Max is the last one standing in the room with the cross, backing his way out the door. And he's there to rescue Mycroft, and they are making their escape up the stairs, and suddenly the door blows down on them.
Yep. Just like before.
Enter the boffin, whose name escapes me now. The scientist, Mr. St. John Smith, Dr. St. John Smith. Smythe, excuse me. And there's a conversation. What are you doing here? Oh, my brother. I'm saving my brother. I don't remember what happens at that point.
Neither do I. How do they get taken hostage? Because
they're overpowering him. There's 4 of them to 1 of him. Let's 3.5. And he doesn't have any of his goons around to threaten.
Max isn't in this scene. Max comes in later. You're confused. No. Because they get taken prisoner here.
You know what? You're right.
And this is where Tickler's like, what do you mean we're prisoners? This is just an awesome rich guy putting us up.
Yeah. You're right. And I'm sorry. I totally fucked that up.
And somebody's like, but Lucard's a genuine blood-sucking vampire. And Tickler says, well, you should meet some theater owners.
Oh, boy.
And so, yeah, then we cut to Chris shaving.
He didn't even have any hair. Okay. I was just making sure. I was never
cut himself with the razor, which is the only point to do this bit in something called Dracula the series, is a Dracula the series.
Maybe reference. It'll come back around.
With the Polaroids?
Maybe it'll come back around. He'll cut himself shaving around
a vampire, maybe.
Vampire, yeah.
So, back to the castle. Okay, yes. Okay, Boffin, you've got to build me the vampire gun. It turns out that I need to take out some other vampires, and I shouldn't have destroyed it. And the Boffin's like,
go ahead.
The gun doesn't work. And the card's like, oh, it totally worked, man. Like, totally.
Yeah, because if you remember that, it did work. He left the gun, and Dracula used it on one of his henchman, I think.
Yep, the other scientist, bow tie scientist number two.
Right.
Yep.
So it did end up working. I'm starting to come around to this Lucard plan, but but I was curious as to why it took so long to set up this. I mean, because it's a bad show. This is a great premise. There's a thing that exists. I want a scientist to build it for me. I've got to trick him to come in. If it was from the perspective of Lucard and they didn't try to leave us guessing what was happening, I would love this so much more. Whatever.
But in order to incentivize the Boffin to make the gun again, Lucard's going to stick Gustav in a spike room, a shrinking room.
Yeah.
And we get a big scene where Lucard says, I saw this in an old movie and I just had to have one. Put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time for the date. Are you excited to talk about the date?
Sure.
How excited. So Chris is at a restaurant waiting for his blind date, and Sophie comes up the stairs, and he says, Sophie, I can't talk to you. I'm on a blind date. And she says, I am too. And he says, wow, it's wild we picked the same spot. And she says, no, dummy. We're each other's blind date. But bump.
What a coincidence. Wow. Yeah, that was
yeah.
But then she sits down and they go through with the date anyway.
So before that, though, I think is where we get Max getting the message.
Right. This is where he comes in. I completely forgot.
Yes, because somehow the Boffin placed a long distance phone call that nobody picked up, and he left a message saying, I'm coming to town to save my brother.
Yeah.
And nobody listened to it all day. But then Max did.
Yeah. So Max knows that everybody's at Lucard's castle, and he grabs his backpack full of vampire hunting gear and
off he goes.
On his bike, presumably, but we don't actually see the bike.
Did Chris and Sophie each take their bikes to the date?
I don't know.
Okay, so at the castle, Magnus is working on the gun, and his brother is giving him shit, and the Boffin makes a comment about how the brother nearly decapitated his band leader once, to which Tickler says, well, you just believe anything, Magnus. So what do you know? All right. The date. I don't remember the exact order of this, but basically Chris reveals that Max helped him with the letter.
Yes.
Sophie reveals Max helped
her encouraged her to look and helped her pick out an ad.
Chris's ad, knowing it was Chris's ad.
Yeah.
And she feels manipulated like a puppet.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris points out that they're having a good time.
Yeah.
So maybe Chris or Max can wait.
Yeah. Maybe right. Max can wait. Wink, wink, wink. What they don't know is that nobody is currently inhabiting their home and that they could go home and very quickly have a little, very quickly because he's a 16-year-old boy, have a little boom boom.
But Sophie's enraged about Max right now. This is the first time Chris has ever shown this much interest in Sophie, and it's not being reciprocated, even though she's always been on the make for him since episode 2.
For some dumb reason, because she's super smart. And
at least in episode 1, she was like, who's this dumb guy? But starting in episode 2, she's just like, wow.
Americans.
So cool.
Wow.
But he's not. He's Canadian. Okay, so.
So is she.
I mean, I'm sure I would have a joke here, but I don't. Gustav's shitty set. What is that? Oh, right. So then we cut to Gustav in the closing room, and he's pushing against the walls, and you can see them vibrating.
Yeah,
because they're so shitty. This is just like, that's cool, guys.
But also, how did you find space big enough for your hand to fit with all those spikes there? And it's really small. So it must be moving very, 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 very slowly.
I thought it was moving fast because
It looked fast, but I mean, it's so small, he would be dead by now.
maybe he's really strong and he's holding it back, which makes no sense because this is an incentive. There's no incentive if Lucard kills him.
Yeah.
Pin in that. So then we cut to the bickering Smythe brothers, where Magnus is explaining he's at a delicate stage of putting the gun together, and his brother says, "You've been at a delicate stage since puberty."
Ooh.
Which is a zing if Tickler didn't suck, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like Tickler's some cool dude. He sucks.
Yeah.
And then Magnus is like, somehow gets inspired to pull a double cross on Lucard, thanks to his brother's teasing. But then we cut to Max coming into the castle and calling out for Uncle Gustav, who says, use the skeleton keys.
Yeah. So he's just got a bunch of skeleton keys in his pocket.
You know it's not a thing? Skeleton keys.
Well, they are a thing in Europe. I stayed at a hotel in the north of England, and I had a skeleton key for my room key.
Did you just break in?
No.
So you don't know that you could have just gone and got a thing of skeleton keys and broken in?
Fair enough.
They could have been like, this is a silly American. Let's give her a skeleton key.
I was the only one staying there that night. They were very nice to me, though.
Okay, but then Max hears someone coming, and so he has to go hide. To which my note was, goofy servant. But no, it's a zombie.
It's a zombie, yeah.
In a shitty Boris Karloff Frankenstein wig. But bump. No face makeup.
Nope.
Just a dude.
Bad lighting, and
Max crawls into the suit of armor and knocks the guy out in the armor, though it's clearly not Max in the armor because it's too big.
Yeah. He's standing on a stool with a helmet on.
And then he says, zombies are so dumb.
Well, they're brain dead. So what's your excuse, Max?
Well, here's some problems, as there are. Last episode, we established the rules of Dracula the series vampirism did leave a subject potentially a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't Lucard want a zombie who wasn't as stupid as this guy?
I have some more theories about this zombie thing too that come out later. Okay. Some questions, not theories, some questions. So put a pin in that.
All right. So Max then goes to save Gustav from the shrinking room. Gustav is just about to get smushed, which means at this point we think Lucard timed it wrong.
Yeah.
And then Max goes, wow, I saw one of these rooms in an old movie. I always wanted one. Because he's just like Lucard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we cut to Lucard coming in to check on the gun. The boffin says, it's complete. Free Helsing. And Lucard's like, I'm not freeing Helsing. It's like, but you promised. And Lucard says, yeah, I lied.
I'm a fucking bad guy. What the fuck?
And so the boffin's like, fine, I'm going to zap you with this gun. And he's like, dude, it didn't have a live power pack. I'm not stupid. To which the boffin's like, oh, well, I guess we should run. And Lucard grabs, what's his face? The tickler, right?
The tickler, yeah.
Goes to bite him. So he's got full teeth out.
Mm-hmm.
Tickler thinks that's just makeup. We'll later learn. But Gustav comes in and says, come with us. And he's got his crosses out.
And Max, yeah. This is where Max has his cross. This is the scene I was confused with.
And Tickler says, I'm not going with you. I'm going to stay here. You're clearly very religious, and I'm not into that.
He's thick.
Well, he's like, look at those stage effects. And so Gustav's fed up, so he hits Tickler, and they drag him out. And the boffin says, I've always wanted to do that. Hit his brother. And he's like, huh. So that's it for our main cast. We get no more of them. We get no more of... Oh, no, we do get more of them. We get them back home.
We get them back home.
So Dracula gets the gun, And then they go home and they're having a drink and they're trying to convince Tickler that Magnus actually saved him.
Yeah.
But Tickler's like, you guys are fucking dumb. What are you talking about, vampires? This is so dumb. And so then Max or Gustav's like, but you gave him the gun. And so the Tickler points out that he built it incorrectly.
Yeah.
So
But
it
he
wouldn't.
doesn't remember exactly what he did that was incorrect.
No, he
Was
switched some chords.
Yeah.
Or circuit boards, but
which makes sense because when he initially was asked to rebuild it, he's like, I don't think I know how. Like, I don't think I have the plans in my head anymore. But apparently he did, and he just intentionally fucked something up. Way to go.
yes. And everybody's like, you're so brave for standing up to Dracula with a fucked up gun. And it's like a fucked up gun without a power pack, too.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
All right. No resolution for Chris and Sophie.
Nope.
Cut to the castle. Dracula brings in the zombie, tells him to stand there, and fries him with the gun.
So, this is my question. In the last episode, there are 3 outcomes to being bit by a vampire: the brainless zombie, the kill him dead, the turn him into a vampire.
Yep.
If he's a brainless zombie, why would the vampire gun work on him?
Because they're brainless zombie vampires. Not zombies.
Okay.
He is somehow a zombified vampire.
Okay.
There are some problems with that, of course, not least of which when Dracula had double agents before, including Gustav's lady friend, there was, and the mom even, there was the implication that he had bit them, but they didn't become mindless zombies.
Yeah.
So
we haven't seen the process by which one gets turned into a vampire, right? We don't know what you can suck your blood out and these are your 3 outcomes, but what is the step necessary to turn somebody into a vampire? We haven't seen yet. Probably fucking Lucard, right? Probably.
In Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's drinking some of the vampire's blood.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
So, we forgot. So the gun works. Lucard blows on the barrel.
Oh my god. Oh, and it's like it's like bigger than like a 20-ounce bottle of soda. It's just this big tube. And I wanted it to make like the noise that it makes when you like I wanted it to make a noise like that, but it didn't make any noise, just a little.
Nope.
And he looks straight into the camera. So I'm on Team Lucard at this point, and every other person, like, I don't care that he's charmless. I don't care that he's a bad guy. I just want him to kill everybody.
I mean,
everybody.
It's a pretty bad episode when Max is even in the top 5 of obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like, the Boffin's better than his brother. That's saying that a solid shit is better than diarrhea. Like, yeah, it is cool. Like, but not too solid. Like, it's terrible. And when I was like, oh my god, is the Boffin actually coming back? That's when I was like, Emily's gonna hate this episode.
It was bad, but it was like pretty inoffensive to me.
And there's some continuity, at least as far as Dracula is concerned. Like, we have seen these challenges to his power. There is no continuity with Chris and Sophie. We've gone from them going on a play date. We've gone from them being alone together for untold hours up in her room. We've gone to him crushing on an older woman. We've gone to an older woman crushing on her. And yet we are right back around episode 3 as far as their relationship goes.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, they assume Max is malicious, but
he looked so satisfied when Chris left for his date. He like practically put his hands behind his back and kicked his leg over his other leg. I mean, he was so satisfied with the outcome. I don't know why Sophie would be so mad. I mean, except she's a girl and her emotions are taking over. She can't control them because she's a lady. She's probably having her period.
It's not free spirit. We're not going to get him asking that. What are you on your period?
I long for free spirit.
My mom left us after my dad asked her every fucking month.
I long for free spirit. At least there was funny in it. At least Winnie was good.
Yep.
There's nothing good about this.
No, there really isn't. Though we are closer to Gustav being bi than ever before, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree.
Though I don't want to watch him and Tickle.
Yeah, so next week on Dracula the series, we'll be watching Lucky episode 13 called Bad Blood. No special guest stars of note. Directed by Randy Bradshaw. That's a new name.
It's a new name. This was also Alan Best.
Oh,
not
Alan King. Alan King. And you're right, there is another Alan King, but this is a different one than the actor.
Is the other Alan King the stand-up comic?
There's an Alan King stand-up comic and there's an Alan King actor.
Okay.
I forgot about him. I haven't been watching my celebrity roasts lately. Never got a dinner. So next week is Bad Blood. Aired. We're into 1991 now. Aired January 19th, 1991. Thank God these episodes are only 22 minutes.
Alan King's not who I thought he was. Alan King is the actor who was in Casino, but I was thinking, I was thinking of Don Rickles.
Oh, that's a totally different person.
Totally different person, but I was saying Alan King, but I was thinking Don Rickles.
Huh, that's weird.
Don Rickles is really funny. Well, they were both in Casino. Don Rickles is really funny in what's that movie? Innocent Blood. That's a good vampire movie. It's not related to this.
I've not seen him in any movies. I've seen him being made fun of on Johnny Carson for all the shitty movies he's made.
He's a decomposing vampire in Innocent Blood. It's very funny.
That could be funny. That could be funny. Okay, maybe we should watch that. Maybe we need a palate cleanser. Jesus Christ.
How many more episodes? 7, 8, or 9? Is it 9?
8, 9. I don't know.
90,000 episodes.
I'm so sorry. I was having fun at some point. I did.
That's right. You were like, oh, that Mia Kirshner, she's a delight.
I love her. And I thought that Lucard would be more charming.
You thought wrong about that.
I thought really wrong about that. He's handsome-y. If he was charming, he would be much more handsome. But he's just so, like, I don't know.
Canadian. Yeah, and Gustav's gotten a lot worse.
Oh, Gustav's gotten a lot worse. Yeah.
Cool. Great show.
Okay, keep with us, folks. It's gonna get better. We're gonna have resolution for Sophie and Chris. Everybody's gonna die. Lucard's gonna turn mom into a vampire, and they're gonna like waltz into eternity together. It's gonna be beautiful. So see you next week with Bad Blood, episode 13 of Onesies. Thank you. Bye.
See you in television land, Emily.
See you in television land, Andrew. Bye.